You're listening to The Big Tech Show with Adrian Weckler, sponsored by Deal. Deal lets you hire, manage, pay, and equip anyone, anywhere. Visit DEEL.com/BigTech.
I was in Spain a couple of weeks ago on holidays, about an hour from Barcelona. I went into a decathlon, and as I drove into the car park, I just saw, as far as the eye could see, Tesla superchargers. There must have been 14. There was only 3 being used. But if you rocked up there, you weren't waiting, supercharging. I mean, how come they can still, there's plenty of reasons to be anti-Tesla or anti-Elon, but how come they can still do charging to customers for 40 odd cent a kilowatt hour?
Yeah.
And we're talking 70 odd for e-cars.
Well, because they have a strategy and they believe it, and most countries do infrastructure a bit better than us. Hello and you're welcome to The Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, electric cars. Sales are soaring. Prices of the cars have never been more affordable. On the other hand, public charging costs at the chargers are rocketing. The future of EV grants is up in the air, and those living in terraced homes are still waiting to see whether and how they might be allowed to charge their home, charge at home in the near future. Well, broadcaster and one of Ireland's biggest automotive YouTubers, Mark Noble, who you will know on YouTube from his channel Nobby On Cars, is with me. Thanks a million for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm going to start on that public charging because we, in The Independent, we covered this quite a lot because ESB, Ionity, possibly others to come, have raised the prices. And the calculation that I did on the fast charging pay-as-you-go wireless tariff that the ESB has now, which is 73 cents, 85 cents now with Ionity, means that for certainly the size of car that I drive, size of EV car, it's now more expensive to charge using that rate when you just rock up to an EV charger, pay as you go, than it is for petrol or diesel.
Totally agree. And in many cases, even without pay as you go, it's still borderline. The average, let's call it a litre of petrol today, 175 cent and about 173 across the country. I mean, I know there will be other places that will fluctuate. And there's really no case if you're solely relying on public charging where it makes sense. Diesel it's nearly 2/3 of the cost. And the timing of it is just awful. I mean, they announced this benefit that really was a benefit to a very limited amount of people. Let's be
2,000 cars. You're talking about the €8,500 grant, which is 5,000 on top of your normal 3.5 grand, limited to 10 million, meaning 2,000 cars, right?
Yeah, it's a small drop in the ocean, 10 million quid. By contrast, the new infrastructure for DART Plus is about 700 million. Now, they're apples and oranges, but the point is it's tiny pocket money. And then the timing of it is further compounded by that at the end of this month, you'll have 20% of the current EV selection of cars you can buy will be wiped out. So a very popular car in Ireland, the Skoda Enyaq, most of the models, if not all of the models, won't be eligible for the grant anymore. So these car prices are going to increase as well as public charging increasing.
And remind us of why that is.
Well, because it's costing the exchequer so much money. It was never going to be a forever gift.
So they're changing the EV. So the consideration for you going for a grant is changing.
Yeah, so at the moment it's up to €60,000. It's going to drop to €50,000, which, look, is fair enough. I raised this point on a recent podcast I did with Darragh O'Brien, and you know, we are subsidizing manufacturers who are not all, like, if you read some of the headlines, Volkswagen cutting 100,000 jobs, it seems like it's all doom and gloom. These companies are in business, as everyone is, to make profit. And our taxpayer money is subsidizing them. And on the same podcast, Darragh, I was only going to listen back to it, he mentioned the Nora levy, which, okay, it's not a direct taxpayer money, but we're paying for it at the pump. So the diesel and petrol motorists are actually helping EV owners to benefit by using fossil fuels.
Do you think that grant, that 8.5 grand grant, was just mistimed? Because it was announced, I think, at a time when the state thought that electric car sales needed a shot in the arm. I mean, let's not forget that 18 months ago, EV sales were doing really badly. They were falling quite sharply. Then, about 14 months ago, they shot up. And since then, I mean, they're up over 50%. This year, the Society of the Irish Motor Industry figures consistently show now over the last few months that category by category, battery electric car sales are higher than pure petrol or pure diesel motor sales, not when you count plug-in or hybrid, cars. So the momentum, the market momentum is in a sense taking care of itself. And then all of a sudden you now have this extra €5,000, which meant if you're one of the lucky ones to get that, you maybe were buying a 25 grand new car, you were trading in, a 14-year-old Ford Fiesta, and it might only have been costing you, 15, 16 grand.
Yeah, there will be examples of that. And I think in the next few weeks, we might get a bit of a handle on what was traded in and what was purchased with it. Because in my head, and I'm not saying a Fiesta isn't a good example, but maybe it was a diesel Passat that was a 2010. And is there a car? Is there a diesel? Is there an electric car physically, size wise, that can replace that car in the market today? Yes. Is there one that will do the same kind of mileage? No. And I wonder if that owner of the Passat, everyone keeps talking about the Hyundai Inster because it's such an affordable car. Is it realistic for that Passat owner to have traded that car in for an Inster?
No.
Is my question.
No, probably not. But the point I was getting to was, given that the momentum of EV sales at the moment is pretty healthy, and we can speculate as to the reasons why: the Middle East war, the levies on diesel and petrol, which, by the way, are scheduled to come back in a couple of months' time.
September.
Supposedly. We'll see how that works, but that would again push the price of diesel or petrol to €2, 2.10,
probably closer. And look, I think we don't really know why was the reason for this. Were they getting heat in terms of sales compared to, you look at our European counterparts? Norway, 98% take up new cars or EVs. Denmark's about 70%. Now you could argue Norway sold all their oil to then invest in EV infrastructure, but it works. I've been to places like Oslo where the Circle K's have the fossil fuel pumps hidden at the back of the forecourt. The forecourt is now 350 kilowatt chargers. It's a different mindset, but seeing is believing. And it's nearly like the ice pumps are at the back in the bowl corner. They're still available. But
it has occurred to me more than once over the years that I've been driving an EV that the rollout, particularly of public charging facility, it's kind of half-assed in Ireland. I mean, the public statements of support and the mindset change that we all need to undergo, and all of that sort of stuff. And I heard Darragh O'Brien on your podcast say pretty much exactly the same thing. It's like they're hoping by magic that infrastructure will appear by itself.
Yes, and of course they will say that, but a huge amount of EV owners. And by the way, there's an EV in my house for the last 2 years. I have solar panels. I'm lucky to be able to do these things. I have a driveway, so I am very much pro EV. And you talk about the potential of diesel and petrol going up again. What I not loved, but a positive or controllable aspect of the conflict of the last few months. One, I didn't have to worry about, does the petrol station down the road even have fuel? But two, you were totally able to manage your costs. But it feels like a very middle class, privileged thing to be able to say. Whereas a car should be for everybody. So an EV should be for everybody. And by its nature, running it should be for everybody. Whereas the government are not really tackling areas they could. I mean, let's not forget, okay, e-cars and ESB, they're different divisions. But ESB is a semi-state company. You're telling me the government can't say to them, listen, the timing of this increase is terrible. Can you just maybe get us to October, whatever, to the budget? I asked Darragh,
but Mark, like the government, they're going to establish a skills group which will report to a commission, which will then feed back into a Oireachtas committee, which will then make recommendations, which will then get,
it's just too many layers. And do they have the power overnight to cut the VAT rate on public charging? Of course they do. I'm not saying they want to. I'm not saying the coffers are there to do it. But when I mentioned it to him, he just said, oh, look, it's up for discussion with regards to the budget. Because we have to talk about, again, you and I have a pretty, I know I've followed your journey of EV ownership. It's not always positive, not always negative. But for a lot of people, there's an apartment, there's no driveway, there's terraced housing, you're told you can't get a swinging arm. There's a very well-known influencer I follow who this week purchased a plug-in hybrid Volkswagen Tayron. And it has about a 19 kilowatt hour battery. And I really struggle personally as an automotive creator as well. Plug-in hybrids baffle me because I've been following this person twice this week, sitting at chargers for 45 minutes with a full tank of petrol where they could just get home, but they can't because they live in an apartment. If you can sit for 45 minutes at a charger with a plug-in hybrid, you can drive an electric car. I'm sorry,
and by the way, that also drives I know a lot of EV drivers mad, and I would have to say I can be one of them, where I'm waiting to get onto a public charger and there's a plug-in petrol car right there. He's there for half an hour. I know that he can drive away, and he doesn't need the charge. Technically, I do, but it is his right as a plug-in vehicle to sit there.
They are entitled, but some of these chargers they're not all really slow. There are some substantial chargers now in the country, and when you have a plug-in hybrid hogging, and that is what that term I use, hogging this charger, when you want to get home, you want to get to an appointment to collect your child, you want to get home, whatever it is, it's frustrating, but they are entitled to be there. They're paying the same as everybody else.
And also, Mark, don't forget, that is a classic example of us fighting among ourselves, EV drivers and plug-in drivers, because of the lack of infrastructure.
I was in Spain a couple of weeks ago on holidays, about an hour from Barcelona. I went into a decathlon, and as I drove into the car park, I just saw, as far as the eye could see, Tesla superchargers. There must have been 14. There was only 3 being used. But if you rocked up there, you weren't waiting, supercharging. I mean, how come they can still, and there's plenty of reasons to be anti-Tesla or anti-Elon, but how come they can still do charging to customers for 40 odd cent a kilowatt hour?
Yeah.
And we're talking 70 odd for e-cars.
Well, because they have a strategy and they believe it, and most countries do infrastructure a bit better than us. Want to take you up on something you mentioned there, terraced homes, a big issue. And that is something that Dara O'Brien has talked about, something the government has been talking about. To remind listeners and viewers, at the moment it remains illegal to run an EV charging cable either across your path, although I've been in East Wall and I saw one guy just gaffer taped it across the path. I've seen a few of those charging arms. There's one in Clontarf that I pass regularly. A guy just has it from his railings about maybe 10 foot high and then hanging over. You're illegal to use. He still has it in place. But the problem is there's loads of terraced homes without a driveway in Ireland, mainly in the cities, obviously. But if we're trying to persuade people that you can switch to an EV, that is something that is supposedly addressed. The government says it's doing this, and it says that it's going to pass legislation. What do we think that is going to allow people to do? Because there's a number of different options, isn't there?
Well, first of all, the arm should just be sorted again overnight. For anyone who's not familiar with it, if you imagine a jet wash in a garage, the way that arm is on a suspended spring basically, and that can swing left and right, that is what we're talking about. Some people say it's an eyesore. We also have planning laws currently that anything that changes the front of your property has to, and I think that's what the issue here is. I mean, the gaffer tape guy, at least he's taping the cable, because the companies that are coming along, they advertise on Instagram and Facebook, they exist in my estate. And someone who works for ESB Networks explained to me, if anybody gets a belt off that power source, the owner of the house is going to be responsible, because they've effectively come along and tapped into the network supply. So, and I've no doubt that the many complex layers, it's like why you see chargers at Circle K's even sitting idle with the covers on for 6 months, because the left hand is not talking to the right hand. They're totally different commercial entities, and it delays the process. And I presume you get people just getting frustrated and going, look, I'll take the chance on getting this company, because I bought an EV now. I want to be green. I want to save money. I'm getting nowhere. I mean, the swing and arm thing has been going on and on for at least 4 years with various different people. It's going nowhere. You just put it up and take your chances, I think, if you really do want to go electric. That's not the front runner that I hear most people talking about is this idea of a pavement cable channel, where like a recess in the recess channel in the pavement. And we see it in some parts of the UK. But that would be like with the blessing of the council. And my understanding is at the moment it would be the council would decide on an application by application basis to do that. And in other words, what you might see, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you might literally see
on the curb, on the vertical fall off from the curb, if it is a curb, you might see like literally a plug.
There's a plug. Some countries do it where there's literally a perspex hatch that opens like a bread bin cover or something, and you plug in the car, and it even works in snow. And I think we've got to think outside the box. We've got to try and change what we do, because I'm not saying we're at peak capacity in EV ownership, but the figures are fine. They're growing, but they're growing slowly. I
Slowly,
saw
yeah.
people talking about, oh, the figures are up 50% in June. 50% of 2,000 is
Yeah.
not a lot. So we need to stop looking at percentages and celebrate them like they're these great wins. We need huge innovation to really make people go, do you know what, I can get around this problem. Because at the moment, if you do live in a terrace house, we're basically saying to you as a country, yeah, buy your EV. It's going up by the end of July, by the way. And also, you're going to have to pay 73 cents a kilowatt hour, and you can do that 1,000. And if we just break it down by 1,000 kilometers for each vehicle, the cost is it's stark.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on your overall listening experience. It only takes a minute, and your feedback helps us improve what we do. When you take part, you'll also be in with a chance to win a €500 One for All voucher. Visit mypodcastfeedback.com and enter your code TECH. That's TECH. Thank you for helping us shape the future of what we do. Now, look, I know there's going to be guys listening to this or watching this and thinking, oh, no, that's way too simplistic. I pay $4.79 for a subscription and I do it this way, and I pay 53 cents or whatever it is. But like, you can't tell people that they start to need taking out more and more subscriptions just to charge their car. They're used to going to a petrol pump, rocking up, 90 seconds, paying, gone. You can't start telling them they've got to start, bringing around different membership cards, because if they don't, they're going to be charged an extra premium for contactless payment and all of that sort of stuff. I want to ask you one thing, though, about, again, the terraced home charging. Interesting comment because I posted a little bit about this, and one of the criticisms that comes back from people who just aren't interested in cars, who would have a hostile view toward cars in general, but it's an interesting point, and they say basically that could mark the semi-privatization of the public road space outside your house. In other words, if I have a terraced home and I use this cable channel method, that I'm now incentivized to start trying to assert almost a pseudo property right over the space in front of my house, even though it's a public road.
Well, can we come up with quick legislation that says you sign a contract that says your understanding is you don't own the footpath outside your house?
Yeah.
And that makes that go away. I don't think this is because people want to own the footpath outside the house. I think because they just want to be able to move with the times.
Oh, no, 100%. I don't think the motivation ascribed to this is that people want to own the footpath. I think the criticism here is that this could create a situation where people now have an interest or a motivation in guarding the space in front of their house in a way they didn't have before. If you live in a terraced house now, you hope that you'll be able to park outside your house. If you don't, you might park 3 spaces down or 7 spaces down or around the corner. Now, one fear might start sort of tense community standoffs. That's my space. I need to charge.
Yeah. Well, you see it a lot with people using wheelie bins and cones and traffic cones because they can't get a parking spot on their house. The easiest answer to this is if we just even focus on houses with specific dedicated spaces. That's probably easier. I think trying to fix all of the things at once is going to be very difficult, because unless you get some sort of metal contraption that folds up when you're not there, and again, a public road. And I suppose the answer to these situations sometimes is that an electric car still won't be for everybody.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants an electric car. There are challenges, with the way Ireland has been designed in terms of houses and parking spaces, and so many new builds now don't even come with a parking space.
No. Just on pricing in general. I mean, you mentioned it. You mentioned the Inster, for example. There are a couple of EVs hovering around that 20 grand
of course.
price point. which is a big change on a few years ago. I mean, you can't get a petrol car or diesel car, a new one, for 20 grand, can you?
I'd have to look at things like maybe the Dacia Sandero and things, but by and large, no. And then
Yeah.
you have to weigh up, and so many people are buying PCP. So let's just look at it as a monthly figure. If you weigh it all up versus what you might, in our house, there used to be 160 quid a month going into a Nissan Qashqai. Now, I couldn't really tell you what goes into an area, especially this time of the year, because it's 10 cent between 2 and 4 a.m. And there's 15,000 kilometers in the car. You might argue, why do we even need a car? So it's the price difference is massive. But things like the new Polo, which is going to be from 19,995. Now, it is the basic model, but not everybody wants,
And is
this
that
all
petrol,
singing.
diesel?
That'll be electric.
Oh, sorry, the new,
Um,
electric, yeah.
Now, it's not here yet, but if that car had have been available and you had have been able to avail of that grant, then that car would have been 15 grand for some people.
Yeah.
When I published that video, and I always film with an Irish slant, of course, there was people replying to me going, "I think you've the price of this car wrong," because they were replying from elsewhere in Europe, and I was like, "No, this is the price in Ireland." I mean, we're notoriously expensive for cars, but sometimes you get this aggressive pricing structure with
Can I ask
Volkswagen.
you? Can I ask you what's going on there with Volkswagen? And I'll tell you why. Because I bought an ID3 GTX.
Yeah.
And I bought it about a year ago. And the price I paid was around 41,500, 42,000, right? And the only reason I bought it was not because I wanted to speed around or go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5 seconds or whatever it is. It's because it has the biggest battery. It's a 79 kilowatt battery, which means I basically no longer have range anxiety because I can reliably get anywhere in the country, literally anywhere, on one charge, including using a motorway. So that's a big game changer for me. But I looked at the pricing in the UK for that car, £53,000. I looked at the pricing in Germany, 55, 56,000 euro, and it's 42 grand in Ireland. What the hell happened there?
And in some ways, it's basically not just a Golf GTI, because the brake horsepower it has. This week I had a 50th edition celebrate the anniversary of the Golf GTI. Your car has pretty much that power.
Yeah.
It's 40 grand versus the press car I had, I think, was 85,000 euro.
Yeah.
It's not going to cost you 176 a litre to fill it. I think market share in Ireland, I suppose for any market for Volkswagen, but market share in Ireland has traditionally been so strong that if there's an area where they feel they can negotiate directly with the factory, you have to remember as well, I don't know if there's a direct link to it, but the CEO of Volkswagen, not the Volkswagen Group, but Volkswagen, Thomas Schaefer, who lives in Ireland at the weekends, the man, loves this country. I don't know if there's a situation where maybe the directors in Ireland can put a call in and go, look, can we get 100 of these units from the factory at this price, because it will help our market share versus Toyota. You just wouldn't know. But when you look at the top EV sales, the ID4 has been there since God was a child.
Yeah.
So that market share is really important, and I think it will help you benefit as a customer. If you look at Kia as well, Kia, their growth in Ireland has been phenomenal. They don't want to be number one. To quote the MD of Kia, he's happy to be third or fourth in the market, selling maybe 11,000 cars a year. Delighted with that.
But the Kias, I'd be interested in your view on this. To me, the Kias, for me, seem like the biggest jump in brand movement, quality, etc. I've never owned a Kia that I've seen in recent years. I mean, you look at the Kia, the EV9, the EV4, you look at all of their electric range. They are now they're not budget or bargain cars. They are high spec cars at mid range prices. That has really taken me by surprise. That in a 5-10 year period, Kia have gone right up the value chain.
Yeah, the Koreans have definitely possibly done what China has done without the same attention on them. Because you are talking a similar-ish period in how efficient their cars have been. In April, I was in one of the BYD factories in China, in a place called Zhengzhou, and the level of automation there was staggering. And you could see how and why BYD can build cars as quickly as they can. There were bodies on the floor, but not compared to, you go into the Volkswagen factory I was in last year, just outside Lisbon, where every T-Roc has been made. It's 9% of GDP for Portugal, this factory. And it's like a science lab. And there's people everywhere, and they all are paying bills and mortgages, and so you do kind of, you see it shoved in your face in Europe versus China versus places like Korea where they build these cars, and I don't Kia are not really at the same
Well, look,
the
no,
price point
huge
is
kudos to
different, you know.
BYD and the Chinese
Yeah,
for, there's an argument to be made that in 10 years' time, most of the cars being made are going to be Chinese just because of those efficiencies, because of what they're able to make at the price point. And yet, if I'm looking at BYD, and I've driven BYD before, if I'm looking at Leap Motor, if I'm looking at these Chinese brands, they don't look as good. I'm sorry. This is entirely my view. I'm not
yeah.
pushing this on you. They don't look as good. They look to me like mid-range Android tablets compared to an iPad. That's my
Well,
view.
the thing that fascinated
Except
me,
Xiaomi's sports sedan.
yeah, some of the Xpeng or Xiaopeng or whatever way you want to
Mm,
pronounce it, some of their stuff is really nice. And the thing is, we're only getting the tip of the iceberg in Europe in what is available in China. What I found staggering when I was on there, on the ground for nearly a week, I saw one ID3 in a
yeah.
week. You do
You're not.
see
You can't sell an ID3 in
they
China.
have 150 brands. Their next generation growing up going, but look what we have. Why
Yeah.
why would we want, your slower charging, your less spec cars? You can see that. There is definitely a white goods element about a lot of Chinese cars, but some of them are really, really stunning. We just don't see them here.
Well, and that's the point, I suppose, for us
You
and
know,
you and I, and talking about
yeah.
this here in the Irish market. But nevertheless, um, so look, what do we think is going to happen now? Do we think there is going to be? Do we think the price of petrol and diesel is going to go back up? Will those cars become more expensive again to charge? What do you think is going to happen there?
I think if you look at history, prices of commodities like petrol and diesel and the price of a pint, it generally doesn't go backwards. So we can assume they will. We can also assume that energy prices are going to at least fluctuate. And as I mentioned, if you have solar and you have some level of control, you can be a little bit more planning for the future. I think it's still a great time to buy an electric car. I I love all modes of cars and different methods of cars and sources of fuel. But if we're just looking at a cost basis, if you can charge at home, I nearly think you'd be mad to consider anything else right now. And I think
Hmm.
you'd certainly be mad to consider a plug-in hybrid. This idea of I just want to test it, I just want to, see if it suits me. And then this person just plugs in their car all the time and constantly drives around in electric.
Yeah.
That seems bonkers. Just go and take the plunge. Um, but yeah, it's not going to get any cheaper to run a car in Ireland. Where the government can control some costs, they really should look at it because it feels like in the last, as you say, 18 months, we're kind of starting to get going here. Uh, Everyone's talking about, oh, well, anything with a plug, but that's kind of muddying the waters a bit. And I don't think that's a helpful statement because we need to really focus on battery electric vehicles. How many are we selling? Is it properly growing? Are they just small figures? Because like we need to get greener. We need
Hmm.
to be more efficient with our energy consumption. And people will always go, well, what's the point as long as China are burning and India's burning the planet? Okay, fine. But what about just the local commute? What about sitting around the school waiting for little Johnny or Mary to come out? We're not sitting there with the diesel 10-year-old Golf pumping fumes around the
And
area.
also, we haven't even talked about like the pleasure of driving them. I mean, look, I do enjoy driving, so therefore I understand the manual control and I get the whole
Of course.
tactile thing. On the other hand, I also get driving around in a city, doing a school run or whatever, and sitting in a really comfortable, quiet, automatic car where you don't have to do much, and it just drives beautifully.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. And if you haven't tried it, take one for a test drive, I
Mm.
suppose. And I was very cautious, making sure that no one listened to what I had to say today and think I'm anti-EV. Not the case. Have one. I suppose where my head goes sometimes is as someone who's trying to represent the motorist. Sometimes you have to put up the post as they did last week to say, "Do you know what, keep your diesel car because this is
Mm.
ridiculous. This is nonsense. We're making the cars more affordable. Oh, the price is going up." I suppose I'm always thinking of the person who could easily say, "Ah, sure, why would I bother?" We need to make them feel like it makes sense. At the moment, I don't think we are. Okay, that those 2,000 people got their grants last week. Great. What now?
Just before I let you go, that point that you're making, putting up a post because you represent the motorist. this idea of accountability. I've run into that quite a bit. So as you probably know, I've recounted sometimes when I've had issues with my EV, different parts of it. Anytime I do that, I get mentioned these sort of hate threads on Reddit, and, this guy and Adrian Weckler is at it again, and all that kind of stuff. And I keep trying, because I write quite a lot of pro EV stuff as well, and podcast as well. I keep trying to tell people this is just accountability. This has nothing to do with whether or not you're pro or anti-EV. This is literally a person's experience in dealing with the technology.
Mm-hmm. And because you have the platform, rightfully so, to express that. And I would also be on the same side as yourself. When I'm reviewing a car, I don't sugarcoat it. If something annoys me, I'm going to say it. There's a lot of comments sometimes with people commenting on what I do and other people, not specifically about me, but just that, oh, no one's going to say anything too bad because they want their next press car next week. I don't care. You're not doing anyone a service. I've built this YouTube channel over whatever, 7 or 8 years, and nearly 70,000 subscribers. I wouldn't have achieved that if I was just saying everything's great and sugarcoating it. That's the whole point. You have this lovely privileged position to be able to go, do you know what, actually, that Ford thing is rubbish, but this is great. And at least then, if you are that type of critique, people can actually trust what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's crucial.
100%.
In a world, especially in a world of influencers now, where you will see someone with a BYD. I'm not knocking it, but they'll have a BYD for a weekend. They'll be like, guys, look, it has a sunroof. There's space for everybody. But if you want to be taken seriously, you have to be able to stand over what you're saying, because you're giving consumer information into the public atmosphere. So it has to be right.
Yeah.
You have to be able to stand over it.
100%. Well, look, listen, thanks a million for coming on. Mark Noble, Nobby On Cars on YouTube, as you said, almost 70,000 subscribers now. Well worth a follow on there. Gav Hennessy was on sound today. JJ Clark produced. I'm Adrian Weckler. You've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show. We'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to The Big Tech Show with Adrian Weckler, sponsored by Deal. Deal's not just another payroll platform. It's one your team might actually enjoy. HR, IT, and payroll together, finally. Visit DEEL.com/bigtech.